All right, today I wanted to talk about planning a 5K. This is where most race directors get their start, is planning a 5K. I wanted to give some um, thoughts and some ideas, and give you a list of um, things to do, the steps you need to take, maybe some things you need to buy. If this is you're going to be your first 5K, or maybe you want to improve a little bit, maybe here's something that will help you improve the 5K that you already have. Or help you through that step process if you're already planning one. First step, I tell people all the time, is to plan a race course. Make sure the course is exact distance you need it to be. So if it's a 5K, it needs to be 3.1 miles. You need to actually get out and measure this. There's a couple of different ways to do it. I know if you want to get a rough estimate of your race course, you can get out, drive around the course that you want to use in your vehicle. That's typically not going to give you an exact distance, but it gives you a rough idea. And then you could shrink it down and tweak it a little bit through these other methods. Another way is to actually plan it on some on your computer a little bit. There's different applications that you can use, like we'll say like Google Maps and stuff like that. You can pinpoint different areas to get a rough estimate of that 3.1 distance, but then you actually have to get out, put your feet on the ground, and actually measure it one of two ways: through a GPS device. What I always use is my Garmin GPS. It's pretty accurate, and I've never planned a race yet where I didn't have service, so it's not an issue to use my watch. The other method is to get one of those like construction looking wheels that you mark it off step by step as you go. But again, you have to make sure it's the exact distance you need it to be. This makes or breaks a race in that first year and even the second year, because people tend not to fix when they're short or they're long. So make sure you plan the race course for it to be the exact distance. For me, this is how I do it. I might drive around a little bit. I might plot it on some type of map application on my computer to get that rough estimate. And then I actually go bike it a few times first, shrink it down or enlarge that route on my bike. And then to finalize it, I actually go walk/jog it. I don't run it. I like to do a walk/jog, because the GPS picks up the distance a little bit better the slower you go. Usually pings like every 5 seconds. So the slower you go, the more accurate it's going to be. And when you get your feet on the ground by walking and jogging it, you have to make sure you're taking the tangents out. So that means you're running/walking, whatever, the straightest line possible. So if there's a bunch of S curves, you actually got to walk that straight line through that like S curves. You don't actually go around the S curves. You actually have to take the straightest line. And that's what I mean by taking the tangents out. To get more information on that, I would just Google some YouTube things and see what I'm talking about at that, when it refers to that, because that's a whole big discussion. But those have to actually be taken out when you're designing the course, because they can throw off a race course by a couple tenths easily. So you have to make sure when you're measuring, you do take the tangents out. Plus, if you're walking/jogging the course, it's a lot easier to stop and go if you're using the road, in case traffic's coming. Second step is find out who owns the property you're using. People forget to get permission all the time, and it becomes an issue down the road after registration gets up, or actually during the race, because people actually don't have permission to use the trails or the roads that they're actually planning to use. So this could be like some conservancy or just a county group that's like for the rail trail, or if it's a town or city, you might have different boroughs or townships or councils that you actually have to go through in those different areas to get permission from each individual entity. That can take some time, because generally meetings are only like once a month or every couple of weeks. So you have to get this planning process done far in advance, because they usually have to give you permission during a meeting They can't just give it to you over an email. They actually have to vote on whether to give you permission. So you have to plan in advance. Generally, I want to say almost a year in advance, maybe at min 6 to 8 months in advance, to make sure you get all the permissions that you need, whether it be road or trail, to use the property that you want to have your 5K on. Again, get permission from the property owners themselves. Maybe it'd be very rare that you actually have one property owner that you can get permission from, and it's actually private property. That most certainly never happens unless it's maybe like a school, like a cross-country course that they have, like on their own property, and you want to use that for a benefit. That might be the exception to the rule, but most of the time you're going to have to go through multiple property owners to get permission. Without permission, you really shouldn't take any further steps. Now, when I say permission, it's kind of a back and forth thing with this next one, which is insurance. Most places are going to require you to have insurance before permission's granted. So you sort of have to have one of those handshake type wink situations when it comes to this, because you don't want to buy insurance for the race until you get permission. But to get permission, a lot of times you have to have that insurance. So I guess what I'm saying is, first, you're going to have to ask, can I get permission from you to use the trail or road that I want to use this for the 5K? And then if they say yes, all right, do I need to get the insurance first before you give me full permission to use your property? They might say, we trust you. As long as you can provide it before the hand, we'll just sign off now. But if you don't provide us with insurance, we'll pull your permits so you can't have the race. That's one way to do it. But most of the time they're going to be like, hey, we want insurance in writing first before we give you full permission. So again, you got to make sure you have that planning range between like the 6 and 8 months, because you might have to go back to a meeting again after you first ask for permission and provide them with that insurance. Insurance can be tricky. If it's a benefit for an organization, say like a fire company or some other charity like a Red Cross or something like that, they might actually have their own insurance and be able to offer it to you, or talk to their insurance company to say, hey, we're going to hold this event. You know, how much is it going to cost for you to cover us for that event? Otherwise, you're going to have to do some digging to find some insurance, because it is really hard to get insurance just for a 5K race. A lot of insurance companies will not just give you 5K insurance. What I do is I go through the Road Runners Club of America. Since I'm a member, I can get insurance through them. I think it's like about 150 to 175 bucks, maybe 200 now. I don't know what. It was a couple months ago before I bought it last. They'll give me like a $1 million policy of insurance for that $150 to $200 range, which is well worth it just to cover your butt and the property owners and like the city, town, whatever, or the rail trail itself, in case somebody gets hurt and wants to sue. Do not skimp on the insurance. Do not think that nobody's going to sue, nobody's going to get hurt. Protect yourself, protect the organization or the business that you're having this 5K for, and protect the homeowners, property owners, and the city from any liability whatsoever. Do not skimp on that process just to try to save money, to raise more money. One of the next steps is to come up with a name for a race. I always tell people, come up with something witty and catchy that's going to get people's attention, and also tie into the benefit, or again, the rare cases like the profit that 5K is going to do. Since most of mine are like fire companies and stuff like that, I have one in January that I call Set Your Year on Fire 5K. Since it's in January, you're setting your whole year on fire, because I tell people this is, hey, a way to jumpstart your year, see how your fitness level is, stuff like that, and set your year on fire. since, I use the word fire because it's for the fire company and stuff like that. So it sort of ties it all in there in a catchy name. And then, you know what I mean? Set your year on fire. So it encompasses like the whole year type theme as well. So get that thing situated, come up with a name. You don't want to call it My 5K, something really boring or not catchy, because people were just going to glance over it and just be like, that just seems boring. And I think that's how the race is going to be. So the more catchy the name is, the more people are actually going to look at it and be excited about the race itself. Finding a timer is critical. You don't want to try to time this yourself. You actually don't want to just be like, hey, you're first, you're second, you're third, you're fourth, and so on. You actually want a timer that's going to post times and results online, because that's what people want. People also want electronic timing. For the most part now, they're willing to go to more events that actually have electric timing than just posting the results on a board or anything like that, or pool tags where the results aren't going to get posted anywhere online. People want it posted online. So like if you do a bib with a pool tag and you post the results on a board at a race, they still want to be able to find them online down the road. So make sure you have a timer that at least posts the results and the times at the race, then has a place later on where they can be found online. Timer is going to be one of your bigger expenses. Could be anywhere from $400 to $1,000, depending on the services they provide and how much they generally cost in general. There's a wide range of prices, depending on the electronic devices that they use as well, and actually how many participants you actually have at your race. We'll say on average, you probably should spend no more than $500 for 150 people at your race, and then it becomes maybe like $1 more per person after that, because of the chip timing that they put on the bib. It costs money. We'll say like 50 cents to $1. So they put that cost on you instead of eating that cost. If you have 1,000 people and you're only paying them 500, they can't eat that cost because they're not making any money. So take that into consideration, how many people you plan on having as well, which will affect your cost of your timer. But you got to have a timer that generally does electric timing and has results online somewhere. What's nice about that is they also oftentimes get your registration up for you and help promote your race and put it on different websites, including theirs, like on their calendar, so people could see and find your race. So it is worth an expense. I know there's some apps out there that you can use and download for free and put the times in manually yourself. But on race day, if you're going to have 100 people, generally you're going to be pulled this way and that way. So it's better to actually hire somebody to do that. So you can be free to do other things that may arise during race day, the whole registration process, and after the race, getting things posted online. What makes your race unique is one of the things to think about. What's going to draw people in, how you're going to promote the race, what's going to make people want to participate in your race. I'm going to say a rail trail offhand because it's an easy example to use. So if you're doing a race on a rail trail, like a flat rail trail, what's going to make people want to come and experience and participate in your race? Now, it might be for a really good charity, like say a fire company, or a really nice charity or a benefit for something. Like we'll just say somebody just got hurt, so you're trying to raise some funds real quick for them. But if you're just going to run on a rail trail and have a start and finish line and a turnaround spot on a rail trail, it's not really going to get people excited, even though it might be for a really good cause, like somebody just getting hurt in your area. It's not going to draw as many people as something that makes your race unique. For example, the one race I do on rail trail, my quarry shack, there's an old like beat up shack now. It has a lot of history to it. and I have my race at Halloween, so I make my race Halloween themed. So I have some animatronics along the race course. I have some inflatables at the start line. I have a photo op session that's Halloween themed. My awards are Halloween themed. My shirt's Halloween themed. And that draws people in to participate year after year and getting new people in. I mean, that's going to cost you some money up front. I mean, but you can reuse some of that stuff year after year. But things like that is what I'm talking about when I'm saying make your race unique and not just plain Jane. People want to have an experience when they participate in a race. And if you want to draw in some people from out of the area, you got to give them an experience and give them something unique that's going to draw them in instead of just wanting to do a training run for that day. One of the other steps in this little grouping here is liability waivers. It goes along with the insurance part as well, but this is sort of like the second category of steps. You got to have that liability waiver that people are going to sign, so they agree like not to sue and go after like the town, the property owners, the rail trail, whatever the case may be, or you in general, for anything that may happen that's within like your control. I mean, again, the insurance covers that, but like the liability is also sort of your backup. So if somebody gets hurt doing something stupid, maybe they're doing jumping jacks or something at the beginning of the race to warm up, they twist an ankle, and they're gonna be like, oh, I'm gonna sue the rail trail because there was a little bit, the gravel wasn't even or something like that. So you gotta have that liability waiver in place, just to protect yourself, the property owners, the charity, or like the fire company that you might be doing this 5K for. So always make sure you have a good liability waiver that covers everything. You can look online at other races, see how they have theirs worded, maybe sort of copy and paste a little bit, just switch the wording around, obviously the dates and stuff like that. Then you got to get your registration open, which is obviously another good step. But first you got to come up with this sort of ties in with getting registration open is your price. But we'll get to the registration open first. The earlier you can get your registration open, the better. I always like to have mine at least 4 to 6 months before the event, because that gives me enough time to promote, get the word out, get people excited about that, get a theme going, little things like that, get the sponsors. So if it's one of the races I'm doing for a fire company, that gives me enough time to look for sponsors, get sponsors to get back to me to donate the money that they wish to. And then we can get their names on the t-shirts when we get to that stage. Little things like that. The sooner you can get registration open, the better. It just makes things a lot easier. But again, until you get permission and insurance and a timer, you really can't get registration open. So get those first few steps done and then get your registration open. The tie-in with that would be your price. A 5K should never be more than $35. I can't stress that enough. $35 is high for a 5K. It should be that $20, $25 range. What I do is I give $20 when registration opens, $25 once the shirt deadline passes to race day, and then when race day hits, it becomes $30. The goal there is one of two things. It's to get people to register early, so you have a rough estimate of how many people are going to show. Because let's just say 100 people show. There's 100 people at your race day of. All right, you want 90% of those people, so you want 90 of those 100 participants to register weeks or months in advance, and you only want like 10 of those people to show up day of. You don't want 10 people to register months in advance and 90 to show up day of, because it becomes a big fiasco. Things get rushed. You might not have enough food or water or bibs or anything like that when you have a bunch of people showing up day of. So that's one of the reasons why you have that price increase, so you can do your planning a lot better. Plus, it gets people excited and the word out, and you can promote it a little bit better with that lower price, and it gets people to want to sign up more at that lower price. The one benefit to that higher price, like the race day registrants, is you typically make more from that day of than you do that early on registration person. But that's where your bulk's going to be, is people coming from earlier registrations than that late registrations. But you want all of them to come, and you want the most participants possible. So you got to keep your registration open up to the day of, and even some for a 5K day of registration. Let's see here. Next one is you got to figure out your swag. What swag is when it comes to racing is your t-shirts that you're going to give out to people. Usually it's a t-shirt. For signing up, you offer a t-shirt. And then if it's like a benefit or anything, you have sponsors, you put the sponsor's name on the back, you put your logo on the front, stuff like that. Maybe some people give out glasses with a race design on it, or hats, beanies, stuff like that, gloves. There's all kinds of different swag that you can give out when people register for a race, but you got to have some kind of swag just for people signing up. Now, they might miss it because they signed up late, but that's why you have that early registration and you have like deadlines. And so like a month out, like, so if you have your registration open up 6 months out, so maybe a month and a half before the actual race date is when your shirt deadline, your hat deadline, your glass deadline is going to be. So if they register after that month and a half before the race day, then they don't get a shirt. A lot of people understand that. You don't want to order extras like swag because it cuts in your profit, and you don't know exactly how many people are actually going to come after that deadline because they didn't register early. So you don't want to be buying things and then potentially have extras. So I'm going to use the 100 as an example again. So if 90 people pre-register like a month out before that shirt deadline, 10 people miss it, so be it. But I'm trying to think where I was going with that for a second. But anyway, you want those people to like give them a shirt so you can get that into your screen printer or whatever beforehand, like that month and a half deadline, so they actually have time to print your shirts or your hats or your glasses and stuff like that. Plus, with that, like the 10 people that like say missed the shirt deadline, I mean, it sucks to miss a shirt if you're really like, if it's a really cool shirt, but you don't want to do it the opposite way and only have 10 people pre-register before that shirt deadline, and then buy 100 shirts and maybe only have like 30 people come like day of or in that deadline. So then you're stuck with 60 extra shirts that you paid for, which eats into your profits. That's where I was sort of going with that. That's why I always have that shirt deadline, and I don't order any extras because I don't know exactly how many are actually going to register after that shirt deadline or that hat deadline. So if I have 50 pre-registered before that shirt deadline, I'm not going to go and order another 50 because I don't know if that other 50 that I ordered is actually going to get used up. I might only have 20 more people show up. So then I'm left with 30 shirts to get rid of that I paid for, and that just eats into your profit for that charity or organization that you're setting out to raise money for. Food, you're going to have some kind of food at the race, like after people finish. It could be some fruit, some granola bars. Maybe it's something tied into the race, like my Halloween one. Maybe I'll have some Halloween cookies, some Halloween chips, like in those boxes and stuff like that. Got to have water at the finish line, maybe some Gatorade or some kind of hydration drink as well. But you got to account for that. You always got to have food at the finish line because that's what people want. You do not want to have nothing at the finish line to offer people to eat or drink. You will get a lot of complaints about that. So just as a heads up, you also got to have like food or something or like food or I don't want to say food per se, maybe like a couple bananas, but generally just like water or Gatorade at the halfway point of your race. So take that into consideration as well. But most of your stuff's going to be at the finish line, like cookies, chips, your Gatorade, your water at that finish line. So you got to make sure you have that. Again, people will complain. And if you got people there for a couple hours of the time, they're going to get hungry, they're going to get thirsty. So you do have to have that. Maybe it's a winter race and you have some chili to offer some people, or hot chocolate. Again, in the summer, it's more like a Gatorade water type deal. Maybe some citrus fruit, some chips and cookies, but maybe in the winter, it's something more hearty. Or even in the summer, it might be like some pizza or something like that, depending on what your budget is. Maybe like your sponsors or donate something like that. Then awards, generally for 5K, you got to have top 3 male, top 3 female. They are separate categories, so that's 6 total right there. Then you got to do age group awards. So they're usually broke down into 10-year age groups. So 10 to, well, all right, I'll start with the bigger ones first. 20 to 29, 30 to 39, 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and then 70 plus age groups. You keep those in the 10-year age groups, and you offer awards for top 3 male and top 3 female in those age groups. And then you want to do 0 to 10, 11 to 15, or 11 to 14, one of those two. And then 15 to 19 is generally how I do it, because there's such a big difference in ability in those 3 younger age groups. So you do have to break them up a little bit differently and keep them separately in that 10 group. 10 and under, 11 and under is really good, because, keep those kids separate. But that age group between like 11 to 19, you got to break that up into 2, because there's just such a difference between 11-year-old and a 19-year-old. Whereas a 20 and 29-year-old, there's really not much difference. Physiologically, or whatever the word is. So that's how you should break up your awards. Again, top 3 male and top 3 female in those age group categories. You do have to have male and female. Do not just say top 3 to save some money. Separate. You don't want to give 2 awards for a person. You can also do like a master's, which is 40 plus. You can do top 3, but a lot of times it's just top 1. It's just like a little added bonus for that older male, female that just misses the top 3, but it's still faster than the most 20, 30-year-olds. So it's nice to have that little master's category as well, just thrown in as a bonus. But you got to have some kind of like cool awards, whether it's just a medal, some kind of woodwork, again, a glass. I don't know. There's all kinds of different awards that you can use, but the award itself should have something signifying that it's like, if you're top 3 winners overall, they should say overall top 3, whether it's first, second, or whether you include first, second, or third in general, or if you just have like top 3 award on it. And then your age group as well, like age group award winner, 20 to 29, second place age group winner, should signify a little bit like what age group category it is, or if they were an overall winner in general. Because you don't want it to be all plain Jane and just give say if you're having, maybe you're giving out some kind of like cool glass or some mug. You don't want to have 50 of the same looking thing, because it doesn't really signify that, hey, I was the top, I was the first overall, or I was the first in my age group. There's really no difference in there signifying the difference between the two. So you do got to keep them separate, at least for the most part, at least in road running. Trail racing is a little bit different in those rules, but that's a whole different category of things. But we're just talking about 5Ks today, which are generally road races or some rail trail. Bibs. Another thing that I like to do is customize bibs pertaining to your race. Some timers have their own designs for their timing companies, which is nice. I really appreciate when they do that instead of just some kind of like plain, because you can just get some kind of like white paper thing that really cheap online. But a lot of timers have their own customized bibs that they'll give the participants to use. But for my races, I like to do customized bibs. It's a way to give like another memento for participants coming and showing up, and a way for them to remember coming to the race and supporting the race, because not everybody's going to come and win a race or win an award. So what you're doing with giving away swag like the t-shirts and offering customized bibs, it's a way for people who might not win or have a bad day, the way to remember the race. So like maybe Johnny, this is his first 5K. He just started running a month ago, and he just wanted to see what he could do. Maybe he finished last. So he still gets a t-shirt, and he still gets that customized bib to help him remember that memory and cherish his first race ever. Whereas if it's just like a plain, it might not mean as much to him, or, it's just another way to give something to participants for coming and supporting your cause. It's one of those kind of hard things to explain, but customized bibs are one of those things people are actually looking forward to now at races and actually expecting. So do plan for that, even though that might cost you $150, $200, depending on how many you order. I think I can customize for about, we'll just say 150 for 300 bibs. So take that into consideration a little bit. So yeah, you have your race designs for your t-shirts, your bibs, your flyers, and the different promotions, like your registration page. You got to have some kind of design for your race to tie it in a little bit. So like my Quarry Shack 5 miler, I have that old Quarry Shack picture. I use that as my banner on my registration page. I use it as my bib. But every year I design some kind of like old looking shack for my t-shirt. It gets people's attention. Since my Quarry Shack's a night race, I used like night ink or whatever you want to call it. So like you activate it under the sun a little bit, and it lights up a little bit under the dark for like a half an hour or something like that. Just something different to get people excited, because people really like cool customized t-shirts, and they like a change every year in their shirt design. Instead of just changing colors of the shirt, they actually like design change that still ties into the race itself. Now, one of the next steps is rules for the races. Got to figure out what your rules are going to be pertaining to like headphones, pets, strollers, and stuff like that. When I tell people about like pets, is I don't like, a lot of people like to use their dogs and walk their dogs when they're doing a 5K. I don't want to say a bunch, but a fair amount of races do allow dogs, but I find that to become problemsome during a race, because not everybody's comfortable with dogs or any other pet that I don't know what some weird people might bring to a race besides a dog. But not everybody's I'm just going to use dogs, but not everybody's comfortable around dogs. So not allowing dogs on the race course, around the start and finish line, or like where the awards are going to be, or the building that you might be using, or pavilion, makes people a lot more comfortable. Plus, it eliminates a trip hazard during a race. So if a dog starts going to one side or another, and somebody's trying to pass to go around, or maybe if somebody's maybe if it's an out and back type course, and runners are coming back from the out and back, that dog doesn't see them running and goes after them, starts barking, and don't have to worry about people cleaning up after their dogs or barking at participants. Another big one that I use is no smoking around the race, the buildings, pavilions, or the race course itself, because you could have some younger people there, so we don't want people smoking around the young children or somebody that has like health problems. Um, so that's one of the rules. So you got to think of like rules like that, or headphone usage. Some races allow headphones, some don't. Just depending on what your rules are, and maybe your insurance has some things or some say in that as well. Then you're going to come up with your schedule, like when registration opens, what time your actual race start is, your race date. Obviously, your race date's more important earlier in the stages when you go and get permission and get your insurance and stuff like that, and get your registration open. The race date, obviously, you got to have that beforehand, which I didn't really touch on because obviously you're going to know a date earlier in the step process, so that's sort of a no-brainer. But again, getting back to the schedule, like how your schedule is going to be the day of the race, when people can come get their bibs, their shirts, the day of the race, like what time that actually opens, when the cutoff is day of the race, like people can't just show up now and sign up day of, when the actual race starts, when the race actually finishes, when the awards start, stuff like that. You're going to have that schedule posted somewhere as well, so that way people know when to show up, when it's tentatively over, and when the awards are going to be, if they got one, so they should stick around for that. It's one of those overlooked things. People just figure, oh, we'll just wait to the last person. Well, if you don't have like a race finish time, people will milk it out. I've seen 5Ks go on for 2.5 hours, which is a really long time for a 5K. So I like to keep it in that hour 15-minute range before I start awards, because that gives like a 20-minute at least pace for people to finish the race, which is ample time, because you also can't have roads or trails closed all day long as well. So you got to get people moving a little bit. And again, it is a race. Even though you might have like a walking division as well, which I'll get back to in a second. Just make sure you have that schedule of events for day of, and events like your shirt deadlines, so people know they have to register by a certain date to get a shirt. This is when the price increases, when it's actually going to open, when it actually closes, stuff like that. Also, like I just briefly touched on, when I didn't touch on before, if you decide to have like a walk division as well, because a lot of people just like walk if it's just for an organization or a cause, you should do or offer top 3 male, top 3 female walkers. But if you're gonna have like a bunch, like 100 walkers, if it's a really big race, and you're gonna have 100 walkers, you should break up age groups as well. But most of the time, top 3 male, top 3 female walker in a separate division from running is sufficient. You just have to make it clearly stated that if they sign up for the walk, they must walk the whole entire time and not jog at the finish line, or any part of the race in general. So we move on to like another step in this little group of things to think about is money to get the race going. As I hit it on a few times, obviously it costs money to get to buy things, the insurance, the bibs, the shirts, the timer. So you're gonna have some money to get that going. So where's that coming from? Whether the organization or charity that you're using fronts it, whether it's you yourself, that becomes an issue, because you got to figure out where that's money coming from and how that money's getting back to that group, to that organization, or you in general. Like for me, when I'm hosting one for the fire companies, I tell them I front the money, but my money is like the first to come back to me. So if I'm spending $2,000 on the race, my $2,000 is coming back to me first before like the profits made, just so I'm not eating $2,000 if something would happen. Just as a quick example. But that's why if it's for a benefit, you get sponsorships. A lot of businesses will just donate money. So that's another big way that actually races get money for the benefit or that charity is through sponsorships. Like, so other businesses, like we'll say construction companies and stuff like that will donate money to, like, say, the fire company. So then you can use that money, to pay for different things like the t-shirts or the supplies or the food that you need. And then the register, because you really don't get your registration money back, the money from people who registered online or in person until after the race, like a couple weeks after the race, because it's got to clear all the different banking and, like, we'll say like run sign up or ultra sign up. Until it clears through them, it might take a couple weeks. So don't count on any of that registration money being able to be used for supplies or the t-shirts or the timer beforehand. So you sort of have to rely on, like, the charity that you're going to use, or you yourself early on to front all that money. But again, a lot of times businesses will sponsor it as long as you put their name on the back of the t-shirt, thank them at the beginning of the race, after the race, or maybe have some signs made up saying, hey, this is a sponsor, somewhere out on the race. Then you have to figure out the publicity part, posting it all online. Hopefully your timer actually does a lot of this. Like, they'll get it up on, like, runningintheusa.com, which is where a lot of people find the races. They'll get it up on there. They'll put it up on their website so people can find it there. But then you have to take the initiative and post it into different, like, running groups in your area, different marketplaces and stuff like that, getting flyers up maybe around town, different things like that, or getting on the news or the newspaper, getting as much publicity as possible to get the word out about the race, and stuff like that. That's one of the trickier parts, because sometimes it is hard to get started in that first year or two to get that demographic in your area to participate or be aware of the race, especially if it's a new race. People in your area might not be aware of, like, an event going on, so until afterwards. So you really have to hit the demographics in your area, like how they find information about events. Safety for races. So if you're running around towns, gotta have, like, the traffic control closing down streets, people out there stopping traffic, putting flares up. So you're trying to keep out as much vehicle traffic as possible during the race, that like hour and a half that the race is actually going on. Maybe shutting down roads, so they'd have to divert traffic away, which ties into volunteers. You got to have a bunch of volunteers for your race. If it's like a rail trail, you might be able to get away with like 5 or 6 people, but if it's around town, you might need 20 or 30 people to stop traffic, divert traffic, and just wave people on, and making sure people can actually cross the roads in a safe manner. It's huge, because people will complain, and it is unsafe if you have open traffic and people are just running alongside traffic. You don't want that to ever happen, and you want to avoid that as much as possible. So yeah, make safety for races, and it sort of ties into permission. I know a lot of times I get asked what my safety for the race is going to be and how many volunteers I'm going to need or have. And a lot of times they want to know you're going to have, like, EMS or medical staff present, which they actually generally require in to give you permission, just in case somebody does get hurt. It goes back to the liability and the insurance things as well. But I always tell people, always have some kind of EMS or medical staff present, just in case something does happen, like somebody twists an ankle or goes into cardiac arrest or something like that, gets hit by a car, which I would say rarely ever happens, but just having that medical staff present appeases the people and makes things a lot safer and keeps you less liable. Even if it's just alerting the local fire company, hey, we're going to be doing this event. Can somebody stop down that's trained a little bit, or just having them on alert, like your local ambulance service, having them on alert that you're doing an event. So they actually like might bring a ambulance down, station nearby, closer, just in case something happens. So it's always good to have that type of thing at your ready, just in case. Generally, nothing ever happens, but that 1% out of 100 or 1% out of 1,000, it's always good to have that extra precaution there, and at least somebody that's trained with like CPR and first aid. You definitely need that. I would definitely not hold a race without that, just for safety reasons and liability reasons. Next, we're going to get into some of the supplies and things that you need to think about day of. Porta-johns. Definitely going to have porta-johns for the race. I would say 2 for every 50 people. You might get away with like 2 to 3 for 100, but then like 1 for every like 25 to 30 people plus that. Unless you have facilities there. So if you're using like a fire station, or if you're using like a rail trail that has like bathrooms right there, you don't have to pay for the porta-johns since they're already there. But you always got to have some kind of bathroom facilities for people to use before and after the race. Just one of those necessity things to have, which can cost you anywhere from $100 to $300 just to rent one. So that's why I try to look for places that I can have the race that actually has bathroom facilities already established. So I'm not giving that extra expense. I can just use their bathroom facilities in general. Tables, chairs, canopies, garbage bags. So if you're actually using a building like a fire hall, they're already going to have tables and chairs. So you really don't need them. But if you're outside, like on a rail trail, you're going to need some chairs and some tables. Just a couple chairs. Most people are going to stand, but to put your food on, get your registration going and stuff like that, or canopies in case it's going to rain that day. Garbage bags, because you don't want to leave any trace behind. So those are little things you have to buy. Parking, figure out where people are going to park. If there's enough parking for the participants that you want to have. That becomes a problem a lot of times. People are like, oh, well, I didn't think about where people are going to park, or anything like that. And then it becomes too tight and people have to walk like a mile away just to go to the race, because the people who planned it didn't plan the parking situation out at all, which is also nice if you use like a fire hall or something like that. There's usually plenty of parking, so that eliminates that. But like a rail trail, a lot of the trailheads don't really have too much parking, so then you have to park along the road. So you have to maybe put out some cones and stuff like that, so people's cars aren't getting hit, and it alerts other traffic coming in that area, that there's, use caution a little bit. One of the things that I like to do is I video the race course, so people have an idea what the course is going to look like beforehand. I give people a map of the course. I give them an elevation chart, so they know what to expect during the race, and they can plan accordingly. So maybe if it's a really hilly course, gives them an idea like where the hills are, and they can plan how they're going to attack the course in general. And it makes people feel more comfortable knowing the course, whether it be a map. So it gives people an idea what to do. So like if you're going through a town, they know the turns beforehand in case a sign falls down or your arrows get washed away, and stuff like that. So it's always good to video and map the course beforehand. And one of the things I'm going to touch on now is marking the course. Got to make sure like every turn has an arrow, whether it be a sign, something on the ground, a volunteer pointing people in the right direction, making sure they're turning the right way. A lot of first and second year races don't have that, and people get really mad and they get lost, and it just completely kills the race itself when people don't properly mark the course, and people get lost or they go an extra distance. It just becomes a big hassle. So make sure you really mark the course, so there's no question that people know which way to go during the race. You definitely do not want to deal with that headache when people miss a turn or go the wrong way or get sent the wrong way by a volunteer. So you also have to make sure your volunteers know which way people are supposed to go. That's happened a lot to me. Volunteers didn't know which way to get I was supposed to go, and they sent me the wrong way. It just becomes a big headache. Got to have your registration sheets for the day of, so people coming day of, they can fill out the forms like their name, their age, where they live, emergency contact, like the liability portion of that as well, on that day of registration sheets. Got to have your deadlines for the shirts, the swag, registration closing deadlines. I'm gonna just go over these real quick. Like the water stop. If it's 5K, you should have a water stop like halfway, or the turnaround. Could just be water or water Gatorade. Somebody manning that with cups. Got to have weather precautions. So if it's out in the middle of nowhere, what happens if it's storming out? You gotta have your canopies and stuff like that so people can get under. Just little things like that, or maybe you're doing a winter race. Gotta have those, like that winter precaution of, hey, is the town able to plow that road early in the morning for me so that we can still hold the race? That happened to me last year. Township was supposed to come and plow the road. They didn't. So people had to run in a little bit of icy situations a little bit. And I got a apology from the township because of that. But like weather precautions, got to think about that wherever you live, whatever those situations may arise. Videos and pictures taking during the race. That's one of the big things now. Should have somebody at your finish line taking pictures / your start line, taking pictures, and stuff like that. So you got those people taking the pictures like before the race, after the race, maybe during the awards ceremony as well. Because people want those memories. And it's another one of those things. It's nice to include when you're doing a race, to include in their registration. And it also helps promote the race as well. Like, you know what I mean? You're showing a bunch of people smiling faces from coming to your race. It helps promote them, and showing their friends, so their friends want to come and experience the same thing that they did the previous year. That's generally it, I guess, for the list, at least the short part of the list. But for 5K, I would plan anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 in cost up front. Now, obviously, if you're trying to recoup that through participation and sponsors, but up front, you're looking at $1,500 to $2,000. So we'll just say $500 for timer, $5 to $7 for t-shirts, another $3 to $5 for awards, a couple $100 for food, like $150 for bibs. Then maybe you're donating some money to your EMS. That's there, paying for an EMS that shows up, little things like that. So right off the bat, you're looking at $1,500 to $2,000. So keep that in your planning process. And then biggest thing would be just finding people to help you organize it, get the word out, on top of the things I've already talked about. But in general, that's going to be the list that you need to do, and think about before you have a 5K, and the list that you need to accomplish to make your 5K special. But I can't stress enough to make it unique, and wanting people to come back year after year. If it's, again, using the plain Jane term, if it's just plain and you're just there for pure profit, you're not going to get as many people. And once the word gets out, your race is just going to be over. And the same thing with directions. The two biggest things that all right, I'll go off the two biggest complaints I have are the food. And actually the biggest one is people getting lost. Not enough course markings. Those are your two that I really hear most often and I run into the most often as complaints. And the third one, which is a couple of tiers down, which is it's a boring race. So think about those things, and hopefully this helped you a little bit. If you have any more questions, there's obviously a little bit more to it, but I figured that's a good way to get started and should be able to figure out everything else from there.